Dr. Edward Bassingthwaighte is a world-leading expert in silent pain in animals and the founder of a profoundly healing bodywork modality for pets, people and horses, the whole energy body balance method. Dr. Edward's passion is empowering pet guardians to take their animals' well-being into their own two hands by teaching bodywork and loving touch.
Thank you all for joining us here today for this Senior Pet Summit. We're going to look about silent pain and how that affects animals, specifically our senior dogs. And I want to welcome today Dr. Edward, all the way from Australia, joining us today as part of our global approach to this Senior Dog Summit. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're excited about your topic and all that you have to share. Starting off, I would just like for you to tell us a little bit how you got into this field that you've created about whole energy body balancing.
Yeah, so the whole energy body balance method is a profoundly healing body work for animals that people either at home or as professional practitioners can learn how to find and relieve silent pain. How I got there is a bit of a long story, but I'll see if I can condense it for you. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Veterinary Science in 1995. Before that, I'd been working with animals for a long time. I grew up on a cattle property or a ranch for you American people. And my first job as a vet was flat out awful. Had terrible boss, terrible hours, didn't enjoy it much. And after about 18 months, I jumped ship on that. And then I did a locum job in Western Australia where a fellow called Dr. Tom Ahern came up to do some work with some horses. And he developed this method of working on horses' necks. He'd anesthetize the horse and have them down and mobilize all the vertebrae. And he would cure these forelimb lamenesses. Here's Mitzi coming to help, my little dog, that they couldn't find any reason for on x-rays or nerve blocks and veterinary workup. So the cause of the lameness was nerve root compression in the neck. Now, I got pretty fascinated by this because I never got taught a single thing about anything like that at university at all. And the first thing I thought was, well, what about dogs and cats? Because they've got necks and backs too, right? And anyone who's a human being, most human beings have experienced neck or back pain at some time in their life, and our dogs and cats do too. Now, 23 years ago, there were no modalities or trainings available about any of this kind of stuff. There's stacks of stuff that you can do now and learn. So I just started getting my hands on the animals, feeling deeper into their body, feeling along the spine for pain and restriction and dysfunction. And pretty quickly, I started finding a whole lot of pain and dysfunction that I didn't know was there until I started looking for it with my hands. When I found it, I wanted to do something about it. So I started playing around with pressure and movement, body work, essentially, self-taught body work, and pretty quickly started getting some really lovely responses in the animals that I worked with. I had a little Jack Russell come in that had been limping its whole life, been x-rayed, couldn't find anything wrong with it. I found a really tight, painful area down in the lower neck, worked on getting movement back into it, and that lameness disappeared. Then a few years after I started doing hands-on work like that, I went to the UK and I got really, really unwell with chronic fatigue syndrome. So I had to go back to Australia and I couldn't work for 2 or 3 years at all. I was too unwell to work, which then pushed me into exploring a whole lot of holistic and alternative treatments for myself because Western medicine ran out of answers really quickly and I was still, comprehensively unwell. So I explored a lot of different things. I found that bodywork helped me a lot with pain and tension and inflammation. And I also at that time started to explore something a bit more left field, which is energy healing. And I found that helped me a lot. I started training in that and found that animals respond really strongly to that too. So about 8 years ago, I started teaching the bodywork side of whole energy body balance work for the first time. And we took all those trainings online in 2019, and now we teach all sorts of people all over the world how to find and relieve silent pain. for pets.
So it's a way of actually, and I learned that with the chiropractic when I went through that training. In veterinary medicine, palpation and feeling the body is a whole different ball game. And you actually the major movements that you make, you often overrun what is really going on. And as I
Yep.
look at your website and have studied about what you're doing, it is very that gentle, just being able to see with your fingertips and sense a change in the tissue and find what you've called the silent pain. And I was amazed. You said 53% of the dogs that you look at or pets do have silent pain.
I work in a veterinary hospital, about 1 and 2/3 days a week. Every day I work at the vet clinic, I will find pain in animals that people don't know is there. And often it'll be missed by the vets. Now, this doesn't mean they're bad vets. It just means they've never been taught about soft tissue pain, neurofascial pain, and they haven't been taught how to feel into the body for it. So if I just get Mitzi here, and you can see him start to flinch a little bit even when I put gentle pressure on his neck. So it's not just the feeling into the body that's important, it's learning to read the communication of the animal while you're feeling into the body so that they can tell you what hurts. Because they can't tell you until you feel into the body. They don't vocalize pain, animals. They don't tell you with their voice, often won't tell you with their behavior. So about 6 years ago, I missed really awful neck pain in this little guy here for 3 weeks. Now, he had a fall on the steps, which I was married at the time. My wife saw the fall, but he got up and shook himself off and seemed fine. So she didn't think to tell me. Now, I took Mitzi to be my demonstration dog at a training, and I noticed a change in his behavior and that he was more reactive to other dogs. When I got home and got my hands on him, I found that he had a screamingly painful neck. And then I realized he'd had it for 3 weeks and he'd shown nothing that I could see, and I've got pretty skilled eye at watching for problems in animals.
What would you say that your amount of pressure, just to give our pet parents that are watching an idea, I'm sensing it's light, but a description of the amount of pressure that you use in your detection and then also in your releasing of that tension and pain?
When I'm assessing, it's actually quite a deep assessment. It's quite a firm touch, but I calibrate it according to the animal's responses. So if the animal shows any sign that it's uncomfortable, then I'm not going to sink in any further. But a healthy animal, an animal that doesn't have silent pain, you should be able to palpate and feel quite firmly into the soft tissues and they'd be fine with it. When it comes to the actual hands-on work, um, the whole energy body balance work ranges from very, very subtle, gentle, light work, craniosacral, and very gentle work through to really deep release and work and deeper mobilization of the core structures of the body. So it's designed to be flexible and to be able to adapt it to the dog's needs in the moment.
Well, that should be comforting too for these senior pet parents. Do you see that there's more of the silent pain in the older dogs?
Well, silent pain, soft tissue pain, or technically, if you want to give it the correct term, I call it neurofascial pain because it's pain in the connective tissues, and the connective tissues are the body's most one of the body's most sensitive sensory organs as well. There's a tremendous amount of nervous sensory awareness in the fascial tissues, in the connective tissues. And every little bit of wear and tear or every other larger trauma causes layers of silent pain to get embedded or imprinted into this neurofascial network in the body. So all animals, as they age, and I know that as I've aged, I have to spend a lot more time stretching, and my body's not quite as comfortable as it used to be when I was maybe 20 years old and could, play football and not think anything about it. But all animals have this silent pain built up in their body over time, and it's pretty rare for an animal by the time they get to 7 or 8 years old not to have significant soft tissue pain, that they would really benefit from having hands-on work to release, because you need to work hands-on to really get to the root cause of this pain. You can throw pain relief at the animals and it will symptomatically improve what's going on, but it doesn't fix the underlying problem. So the only way that I've really found that effectively heals this silent pain and tension in the body is body work, touch, engaging, stretching, moving. The connective tissues and structures of the body is the most effective way to help them.
What would the pet parents look for in, like you had said, your dog example where he fell down the stairs and you watch this all the time?
First thing is, even though older animals are more likely to have silent pain, young animals can have it too. You can even have puppies that have a difficult birth that will carry a legacy of silent pain. You might have a puppy that's dropped on its head by the kid who owns the dog, whatever, so it can happen to all, but it gets worse as they age, and you're far more likely to have it in an older animal. So there's three sort of red flags or things to look out for. Mitzi wants to get down. I'll say goodbye to Mitzi.
Hi, Mitzi.
Um, the first thing to look out for is changes in behavior. So even a really small change in behavior can be the tip of an iceberg of a whole lot of silent pain that's in that animal's body and in their life. So any increase in reactivity or aggression. So that's what alerted me to Mitzi. Now, Mitzi had another smaller change in behavior during that 3 weeks that at the time I didn't think anything of. He stopped wanting to go up the steps. I just thought he was being a funny little dog because he's kind of a funny little dog, right? But now, if he showed a sign like that, I'd be saying, come here, dude. Let me get my hands on your body and there must be something going on. So small changes in behavior are good. You get a lot of dogs that are just not quite themselves. A bit off color, nothing when you go to the vet can't find anything, x-rays don't show anything, blood tests don't show anything. But then when I get my hands on and engage with those connective tissues, the animal goes, oh, I'm sore. What are other behavioral signs to look out for? Any reduction in wanting to play or wanting to go for walks. Play behavior is a really good indicator of overall well-being and engagement with life. And any reduction in that is a problem that you want to look into. I think another one is if your old dog stops jumping on the couch or on the bed, it's not because they don't want to. And a lot of people just mention this in passing when I'm consulting with their animals in the consult room. Oh, they don't want to hop on the bed anymore. And I get my hands on their lower back and I'll be like, oh, we've got significant lumbar pain that's stopping your dog jumping on the bed or in the couch. So animals, it's really high value for them to get on the couch. They love it, right? So anything like that is important to look out for. A second thing to look out for is any changes in how your animal moves or how they respond to you touching them. I know it's a bit of a no-brainer, but if you suddenly have one part of the animal that they're uncomfortable with you touching, there's often going to be pain there. Other things to look out for are any kind of stiffness or slowness when getting up and down is a really important thing. Now, I'm just going to step out of this. That's things to look for a second, but a lot of people think it's normal for their older dog to slow down and get stiff and less active. And in some respects, it is normal as you age for that to happen, but a lot of it can be helped with appropriate treatment. And as soon as you see the first little signs of that, in fact, hopefully a little bit before you see the signs, you should be tootling off to get some good supplements and herbal pain relief and anti-inflammatories. And then you'll have a much happier, more active dog for a long time. And you should also need to learn how to do body work. So every day you can get your hands on your dog and stretch and dissolve the pain and tension out of their body. Another really important one to look for is if your dog starts sitting a little bit slumped off to one side, or if they start tracking on an angle instead of nice and straight when they're trotting. If they get any kind of tremor in their legs when they're standing, that is a really strong sign that they've got pain and weakness in their body. So, the other big silent pain issue in older animals is arthritis, which is degenerative joint disease and pain in the joints. I've never met a dog with arthritis who didn't have a lot of soft tissue pain and didn't show really beautiful changes in behavior, like perhaps starting digging holes again for the first time in years after having body work. But the third red flag is kind of a red flag that doesn't exist, because a lot of these animals, just like Mitzi, will really show you nothing, and you won't see any obvious signs. And that's because this pain is distributed throughout all the tissues in the body. So there's no one part of the body that hurts to stick out and give you a symptom. Yeah. Um, so nothing is a sign that many dogs exhibit. And like I said, more than half the dogs that come into me at the hospital have significant soft tissue or neck or back pain that their humans are totally unaware of.
So from that, number 3 would be don't wait until they get worse, like you said, to learn about how to do this at home, because you do have programs available that are very apple. Anybody can learn how to do it if you have the
Absolutely.
interest and want to.
Absolutely. Look, what I say is, if you can learn how to tie your shoelaces, you can learn how to do this beautiful healing hands-on work with your animals.
Mhm.
Because when you were 3 or 4 and you're trying to tie your shoelaces, I can bet you weren't finding it the easiest thing in the world when you first started doing that, right? But you learned how to do it, and now it's easy as anything. It's like driving a car or riding a bicycle. If you're willing to put a little bit of time and effort in, you can absolutely learn how to make a huge difference for your animals with this intentional, skillful, loving touch.
You talk a little bit about the balance as helping them to get into this state of equilibrium, working the energy from side to side and helping the body equally function from one side to another, because they certainly could have one area that's compensated and isn't
Yeah.
moving, which leads to other soft tissue. So reflect a little bit about your, because you have a lot of like the awareness, the spiritual awareness. You talk about that too. So you're really integrating not just the body part, but you're working to get that whole beingness, bringing its
Yeah.
vitality back. There's a lot about that I see in what you do.
Yeah, that's true. So, we've got whole, if you look at the name of what I've created and what I'm sharing with the world, whole is the whole being. Energy, well, energy is life. If you don't have energy, you can't do anything in the body. The body requires energy for every function of life. The body is the physical, and balance is harmony and health. So with the we have a couple of different trainings. We have the web bodywork for pets, which is very physically based. It's very hands-on. It's very connecting with using your hands to feel into the body, to map out what's going on in terms of pain, tension, and restriction. And then there's a whole broad range of bodywork skills that you use intuitively and fluidly and flexibly to relieve that pain and tension that you find. And all of that is informed by um, a healing energy connection, a flow of healing energy from the person to the animal, which is inspired largely by my Qigong practice. We are energy beings as much as we are physical beings. And Qigong is something that has been developed and practiced in the East for, tens of thousands of years. And they really know what's going on in terms of internal energetics in the body. If you look at acupuncture, which can have tremendous healing effects with animals, that's a physical intervention into an energetic system in the body. And the body work does that as well. It moves energy. It doesn't just affect the physical, it affects all the energy systems and the whole thing, because that neurofascial network is a fractal meta organ, because every other organ in the body is given its shape and structure from the full size of the organs right down to the microstructure. The neurofascial network is the structural organ of everything in the body. So it interpenetrates everything like this amazing three-dimensional spider's web of tissue. And if you pull on a dog's paw, you're affecting the whole body through that network. And the neurofascial network has these pathways or highways in the body, which were um, mostly sort of found in humans by Tom Myers, but it happens in animals too. And the meridians follow these pathways that also carry the nerves and the blood vessels. So the physical is intimately tied up with the energetic. And we do have a second training which we focus more purely on working with the energy systems in the body too.
So with everything that's going on and has been the past couple of years, people are living in a more stressful situation. And the animals certainly pick up on their energies about this
Yes.
stress. And that, of course, creates tension, which is going to affect those neurofascial planes. I could see that by doing this, because you have a calm nature about you, which has probably developed over the course of what you've created, your awareness and your focus.
Yeah.
And I could see that the people doing the body energy balancing work would also benefit from it. So they're working on the dog and the dog is improving, but I bet some of their neurofascial planes and their body improves at the same time.
Well, look, the first thing that we teach all our students is nothing to do with animals at all. It's an internal process for the human, which is a somatic embodiment and energy connection practice. And that's the foundation upon which everything else comes from. And the core thing of that is simply bringing awareness into your physical body and being present with whatever you're experiencing. The more awareness you bring into your body, it's not necessarily totally comfortable at first because you'll start experiencing things you've suppressed or sometimes old stuff will come up for you to re-experience and integrate. But what I notice when I'm teaching this process, um, so when I was teaching face to face, which hasn't been so much for a while, but we'd have a room full of people and dogs. And all the dogs would be going, "Oh, look at all these dogs, and I'm in a strange place, and I'm really not too sure about this." Right, at the start of the day, all the dogs are quite aroused and quite uncertain about being in this strange place with all these other dogs and people. And I'd lead the humans through the somatic embodiment and energy connection practice. You see all the dogs go like this and relax. So there's a real obvious physiological somatic response in the animals to the humans doing an internal practice. And I see this too, when I'm doing sessions with animals in the clinic, I'll often just pause and internally refresh and strengthen that internal process. And often you'll see the dog soften, take a deep breath, and you'll often see the human in the room show obvious signs of relaxation from me running an internal process, which I think is just fascinating.
That's part of that universal connection that all energies are connected and anything that happens in one individual's universe can affect all those others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keeps keeps going. Um, so you also talk about conscious awareness, which is a little bit about what you were just referring to, but I think there's probably a bit more to that about being. You talked about being present and aware. So I'm just trying to get our pet parents to realize that this is it's inclusive to all aspects, and even from this presentation to be able to think afterwards and then have some aha moments for themselves.
Yeah. So um, about 5 years ago, my my wife left me. It was very, very emotionally difficult. And, it wasn't the happiest marriage, so it took me some time after the marriage to realize just how dysfunctional it was. So I was left with a lot of um, post-traumatic trauma and stress from that. So that's when I first came across this idea of bringing awareness into the body. And I found that, wow, every time I do that, life gets better. And the more I do it, the better life gets. So the more you can just simply bring your awareness into and throughout your body and be willing to be present with whatever's going on without any wish to change it or try and fix it, just to be a gentle witness of it. That really, really helps. And there was a research study. I can't remember the names of the people, but they did some research on looking at cortisol levels in the hair of dogs living with people. They had one cohort of people who had anxiety and another cohort that didn't. And the dog's cortisol levels mirror the stress in the humans. Interestingly, not so much the other way around. If you've got a stressed dog and relaxed people, the humans don't get affected by it. But dogs are extraordinarily empathic, sensitive beings. So they feel your inner states in their body, in their experience of their body. I believe that's how this is the mechanism of that. Now, I don't have any proof of that, but not scientific proof. I've got lived proof of it, but not scientific proof. So the more you look after yourself, and one thing I say to people is, treat yourself. Do you treat yourself as well as your dog? And most people go, no, not even close, right? So I encourage people to start treating themselves as well as they treat their dogs, and to actually go out and actively learn and do practices that help them relax and help them process their old trauma. Because everything you suppress in your body and in your life and in your energy systems impacts your animals really strongly.
Well, we're happy to have them with us, but we do have to realize that all that we are creates some of what they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, when you were talking about that, uh, the awareness level, and then being in the present, and then the sensation of that connection. And when I do trigger point work and tissue work on them, you have it's that moment of the release, which is not it being forced to happen on the dog. It's that change occurred, which allowed it to happen. So there must be that kind of that that when you step over that bridge at that one point where you can tell, I mean, as you train your students to do this and the pet parents, that they then are able to sense that when
Yeah,
that change occurs.
absolutely. Um, that's where you get into really learning how to talk dog, how to listen dog, probably more accurately, but you just learn how to communicate dog too. So I've always been really fascinated. I'm quite aspy. So, Temple Grandin's another
Mhm.
autistic person who's done a lot of great stuff with animals. Now, I'm not anywhere nearly as severely on the spectrum as she is, but I do have strong aspy traits. And when I came across the work of Monty Roberts, the
Oh yeah,
Swiss poet,
yeah. Read his
in
book.
my early teens, I suddenly realized, well, I can learn how to talk horse. And that was probably my first step towards this whole holistic connection, communication, and treatment of animals, was me starting to work with horses to get them to, by speaking what he calls equus, and getting them to want to be with me and to want to cooperate and have an equal partnership with me. So the same thing is true with your animals, is that I think one of the problems with silent pain in older animals is that, for one, there's a real strong genetic instinct to hide pain or weakness, because if in the wild, if you show pain or weakness, predators go, oh, lunch. There's lunch. I'm going to have that one.
3 to 1.
And in wild dog packs, it's not unheard of for the pack to turn on a sick or weak member and kill them.
Mhm.
So they've got this genetic thing to hide pain from us, which is kind of sucks, basically. But the thing is, the more sensitive you can get to the really subtle communications of your animal, and our animals are the most exquisite non-verbal communicators, right? We think we're verbal humans. We're mostly non-verbal, but we think we're verbal, and that actually disconnects us from the richest experience of communication, which lives in the non-verbal, which is facial expressions, movement, body posture, scent, a whole lot of things, right? When you start switching on to using your body movement to interact with your dogs, when you start switching on to how the intensity and direction of your gaze can communicate with your animals, wow, it's a whole new universe. And when you learn, when I'm teaching people to do body work, that's a very large part of what I'm sharing, is how to become super sensitive to the dog's communication, so that then they can guide you through the treatment.
Yeah, they definitely can do that. As you put your hands on them, they'll move into you. Horses do the same. Yeah, you move away when you get to the sore area, and they'll move into you when you're doing something. They're going, "Yeah, that feels good." And
Yeah,
paying attention to all of that. It is so rewarding. So
it's really beautiful.
when that all comes together like that. Are there any aspects about the silent pain that you would want to make sure, like, to share with the pet parents, that something that you would want them not to do, something that might be an aversion, that, like, getting started, to beware of this, situations that may aggravate, as opposed if they're thinking they're helping, but it's not helping, and something they would do with the body?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest problems that adds to and makes silent pain worse in dogs' bodies over time is high impact, high arousal play. And so ball play is actually really unhealthy for animals. It's n- so there's a couple of problems here. One is that as soon as you get the ball out, they get super excited, their arousal levels shoot up and their pain tolerance shoots up. So that's another survival instinct, right? If you're fighting or fleeing for your life, you need to turn your pain off until you're safe. Then the pain will kick back in and you'll go and hide in a corner till you get well with the injury, you know? That's what animals do. So I really encourage people to minimize that. I think a small amount of high arousal, high impact play is healthy for dogs. But humans, we're monkeys. We love razzing dogs up. You know, I see the nurses in the clinic. Dog comes up and they go, oh, hello, hello, oh," and the dog's going on and gets into arousal, right? Which is not really the best thing for the dog. The best thing for the dog is to just give them some space and be still and quiet with them. And I really encourage people to do a lot of calming work with their animals because most dogs are in a crazy, they get stuck in over arousal and they can't regulate back to relaxation. Now,
Yeah.
the web, the web body work also really helps with that. And we get spectacular results with treating anxiety and trauma based issues with this work too, because the anxiety and the trauma is really just an arousal response that is got stuck on and the animal can't regulate back to relaxation. The body work causes a body level relaxation response. And if you keep doing it over time, you teach them how to regulate and shift their resting state back to where it should be, which is healthy relaxation.
So you're
Uh,
saying they can actually learn to do it themselves?
They get better at regulating. The more you take them
Huh.
through the process, the more they build the neural pathways to be able to regulate from arousal to relaxation. Yeah. And anxiety too is a big contributor to silent pain because anxiety causes tension.
Yeah.
Chronic tension builds up in the body in the neurofacial tissues and becomes
Mhm.
pain. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is to be careful about high impact, high arousal play. If you do have to throw a ball for your pets, get them to stay with you, throw the ball. When it stops, they can go and grab it and bring it back. That takes out a lot of the danger of the hard stopping, turning, twisting, leaping that causes a lot of problems. What else could I say about that? With older animals, there's a lot of supplements that can help. You know, CBD is the first sort of pain relief that I go to for older animals because it's pretty non-toxic and highly effective. At some point, most older animals are going to need to have heavier duty pain relief for palliative care. Heat packs can help with older animals. And look, you know, any sort of touch with your animals is going to start making a difference. Any sort of just gently stretching the skin over the body is going to begin helping them. But if you really want to give them the most comfortable and active old age possible, then learning how, you know, really getting the skills so that you can assess them. I assess my animals regularly. My recommendation is that all animals should be assessed for silent pain once a week because they can sleep funny or they can slip jumping off the couch when you're not watching them, or they can be playing with their friend and just trip and have a fall. And if you can get your hands on that issue early, it's really easy to let it out of the body. But if it gets stuck in there and embedded over time and time and time, it gets harder and harder and you get less good results. So the best way I know of also to prevent the onset of silent pain, even though it's inevitable, and make it less severe when it does come along, is to be doing regular um, neurofascial bodywork with your dogs.
Uh, w so this is kind of something that I realized one time going through life. First, you pet dogs, you pet the cat, you pet the dog, but when you learn this kind of body work, how you pet them before is totally different than how you pet them now.
Yeah,
It's
you
like
know that.
their body even, like, leads your hand into a
Yeah,
spot, and you don't just do the pat, pat, pat or the rub, rub, rub. It's like it's so different in what your fingers do, and you can't even like, I can't even stop myself from this other form of petting, which is nothing like it used to be in my younger life.
yeah, absolutely. Every touch becomes a beautiful healing connection and communication with your pets when you learn this kind of work. And that when you learn this, not only because the touch is deeply pleasurable and relaxing for the animal, but because you're learning how to communicate to them, so you know you hit a sore spot, and they go a little bit tense, and you relax, and they go, "Oh, the human's listening to me."
Yeah.
So you actually build a much deeper, more beautiful relationship with your animals when you learn this kind of work too.
I always say, especially with the horses, but it'll happen with the dogs too, that when they don't know you and they come in and they're a little bit unsteady about where they're at and what's going to happen. And then they realize, because I do a lot of soft tissue work before I do my chiropractic part, which I'm really thinking about. Your program adds so much to it. I think this is like super valuable. But once they realize they don't have to be afraid and it starts feeling good, and instead of them being tense and wanting to go away from you, they actually move into you, then they'll turn and look at you, and I say, "Yeah, well, I'm their newest best friend." It's like you
Yeah.
have all these first moments of being their best friend because, as you said, they go, "You got it. Thank you," and I'll say, "You're welcome."
Yeah, yeah. And, often the first treatment or 2 treatments, they'll be like, "Oh, oh, you're touching sore bits. No one's ever touched these sore bits before. I don't think it should be allowed." But nearly always after a few treatments, they are really happy to see me. I have a few dogs that the owners tell me when they turn into the street, it's like, "Woohoo!" and they get all excited.
Yeah, it's like they never wanna go to any other vet, but they're so happy to come and see Doctor Edward,
Yeah.
because they go out feeling better. So it's a win-win situation. So I think that ball example, if people don't take anything else away from this, which I know there's a whole lot more that you've shared, that one that you made about really watching about the ball playing and the high impact and how that ramps up and they bring their pain down. I think that was phenomenal and so important because as you said, people enjoy that getting all excited. But I think of how many dogs I've seen that came in that were injured
Yes.
during that kind of play. And if
Yes.
not
So
instantly, the buildup of overtime and weakening, they turn a certain way, they land a certain way, and after a while, yeah,
they go
now
to
they've got
cruciate.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the really important things, and the other thing that I would really love people to take home from this is that silent pain is very, very common. More than half the animals I see have significant silent pain that they need help with. That's actually more than half the animals have significant silent pain that the humans are completely unaware of.
Mhm.
And the other take home is that if you really want to make sure that your animal doesn't have silent pain, you need to learn how to assess for it with your own 2 hands, and you can absolutely learn how to do that. It's easy to learn how to do, and then you can learn this whole beautiful way of, blessing your animals with loving touch that
No,
then melts pain, tension, anxiety, and trauma right out of their life.
I love that word blessing. That's awesome. How can our audience learn more about you?
Wholeenergybodybalance.com.
Thank you, Dr. Edward, for sharing your skill and your expertise. And I look forward to visiting with you and sharing some good communications in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
We're just delighted that you were a part of this Senior Dog Pet Summit.
Thanks again.
Cheerio.